was at a time where I was just like, I don't know how to cope with this at this point, you know what I mean? This was probably the most vulnerable I ever was. All the good and the bad, it helps shape you to become stronger, to be the person you are today. Mental wellness is essential in any fight that we're doing.
Assalamu alaikum, you tuning in to episode 7 of Talk Ya Haqq. I'm your host Idris.
I'm your host Abdi. We have another very special guest, one of my close friends, my brother right here. Introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, my name is Mohamed Abdi, aka Mo Prince, and I'm 23 years old, and I'm a senior at the University of Washington, Seattle.
MashaAllah,
MashaAllah, man, MashaAllah.
Man, we saw your video on Instagram, you know what I'm saying, and it gained a lot of traction, you know what I'm talking about, and you raised a lot of awareness to mental illness and also some social and political issues in the community, you know what I'm talking about. And I feel like having you on the platform and on our podcast and talking about these issues in depth, I feel like it'd be a lot of benefit to the people.
Thank you,
inshallah.
Yeah, so one of the, before we get started, when I was talking to you about this, what was the reason for you to start up that little documentary that you did it,
Yeah, basically, the behind the scenes, the reason why I was able to, do this short film was because I felt very inspired during COVID. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of things going on in the world. COVID kind of put a stop in all of our plans, you know what I mean? Whether it's, things that we had going on in our individual lives, our cultural life, you know what I mean? Our family life, everything, And I just made a decision. I was going to be complacent, you know what I mean? I didn't want that to stop my drive to want to fight for liberation and fight for social justice, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, I'm not a filmmaker. I never did no short film in my life or anything like that. But I knew I had a platform as far as over the years, people knowing me as an activist, as an organizer. So basically I took it upon myself to do a short film, and I actually had a good friend of mine that hit me up during Ramadan. He was like, I have a friend who wants to do a short film with you. You know what I mean? He was like, he loves everything that you do in the community, and he wants to do an East African documentary. And so this is a good friend of mine, and I was like, okay, I'll take on your word on that, and it's a friend I respect, So at first I was really nervous but excited because I was like, okay, I'm gonna be doing a short documentary, but I don't know who the person I'm about to work with. So he kind of connected us together. We had a few phone calls. It went very great. And then before you know it, we said, hey, we're gonna tackle on mental illness, self-care, and surviving this movement work. And then we did a short film.
Okay.
MashaAllah. Man, that inspiration that you had, the political and the advocacy, where did that come from? Where did that stem from?
Well, honestly, I'm going to say it started from just being the oldest of 8 kids in my family. I feel like being the oldest, I always had to set the example, be a role model in my household. I'm a first generation college student. So inshallah, my goal is to be the first one to graduate in my family.
Inshallah.
And so, there's pressure that comes with that, but it's also a humbling role to have, you know what I mean? And so my leadership skills was always stemmed from being the oldest at first. And then after that, as you get older, you start to realize that, we're different than most people in this country, in this world. So having so much intersectionality with being Somali, being Muslim, being Black in America, you start to realize, hey, I have all these different identities, and I need to always raise my voice in anything I do. You know what I mean? My voice needs to be heard, So basically, over the years, I've just taken over leadership roles. I've been a middle school counselor, like a middle school mentor. I've worked with homeless people, worked with legislators. Been at in DC, fighting for laws and bills that affect our communities with immigration, education, homelessness, and so these are just things that was always built inside of me, and so it's just been able to propel over the years as I've gone into more leadership roles. You know what I mean? So yeah, leadership is something that it's what I live for, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's powerful, wallahi. I feel like one point you raised in the documentary was mental illness.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in the Somali community, mental illness is like a taboo. It's like we don't talk about that. That's not something that we're suffering from. But if you look at the statistics, I think it was 1 in 3 Somalis are suffering from some form of mental illness.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like you shedding light on that is very important. But let's talk about what are some of the symptoms? What are some of the reasons for why mental illness is something that's kind of swept under the rug in you guys' opinions?
Well, for me, being that, we're all Somali too, you know what I mean? We come from Somali households. Our parents had to live under different circumstances that we've been able to live today, you know what I mean? The privilege that we have today. And so, it's a taboo thing. Definitely, in our parents' generation and our ancestors and our great grandfathers and grandmothers, this is something that they just had to live with, you know what I mean? If you are mentally not okay, they label you crazy while Valentine, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so, and then they sweep it under the rug, and they just it was something that they just had to push forward, and it was not a normalized thing. You know what I mean? So I think that our parents is we all have grown up. Most of us grown up tough love. You know what I mean? Our parents love us, but they can only raise us and teach us. They can only do so much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Due to the circumstances of how they were raised, you know what I mean? So, mental wellness and mental illness is something that is very, very underappreciated and very under-recognized in our communities, in our cultures. And so I just feel like there's no better time than for us Gen Zs, for us as millennials that are living today to kind of change that narrative. You know what I mean? Because we can't do nothing if we can't help. We can't help anyone if we can't help ourselves. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's very essential in everything that we do.
True. I also agree with what he's saying, especially when it comes to a lot of the Somali community, like for instance, like me having a mom and my mom being Somali and my dad having that Americanized, like how he grew up was that more Americanized culture, and it's like me seeing my mom where to the point where mental illness like completely does not exist. Like it's like if like it's just they don't even know like where it starts from or what it is. They just ignore it to the point where it just boom, it disappears, And that was like the crazy thing that I learned about it was that. And then my dad, he understands it and knows it. He's like, I know it exists, but I'm not gonna acknowledge it, or even try to work with it and be like, I'm gonna try to do this. So that was like the weird thing in my life. So I'm like, whoa. So if this doesn't exist, do you guys not know that this is the main problem that causes bigger problems to happen? You know?
Like a point that you raised in your documentary, you said like intergenerational traumas, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like one thing, when you said that, I pondered about, subhanAllah, the effects of not addressing some suppressed traumas. And I feel like it has latent effects, like subhanAllah, if you've been raised a certain way and then you go through a war, like a civil war, and you've seen, subhanAllah, family members either being raped, being shot, being killed, right in your face, what that does to the psyche. And I think what ended up happening was having to flee to different countries. The last thing they were able to do, like you said, is like to acknowledge what was going on. They kind of suppressed and swept under the rug, thinking, if I think about it, I'm going to go crazy.
Right.
And later on down the line, what ends up happening is how they raise the children is kind of altered because of the effects of something that they endured. Right. So when you said intergenerational trauma, like what were you thinking about when you mentioned that in your documentary? No,
that was you beautifully said just right there and there. You know what I mean? It's something that intergenerational trauma is something that's been rooted in our history and in our lineages since the beginning of time, you know what I mean? And so when these things are being passed down from one generation to another, again, all of our ancestors and our parents, they've all had to suppress their feelings with all the different traumas that they've had to deal with, you know what I mean? Whether it's being in an abusive household, whether it's you're having abusive power, there wasn't even woman power, you know what I mean, right? Exactly. You know what I mean? There's a hierarchy, you know what I mean? There's tribalism, there's war, right? You know what I mean? So I think that wallahi, subhanAllah, our parents and our ancestors had to deal with a lot that we can never ever even imagine, nor can we ever really understand. Does that make sense? Yeah. I feel like the only thing we could really do is, with now us living right now in our existence, to pay homage and to, you know what I mean, show them justice. Like, hey, like, I'm gonna try to change my family's lineage and in our generation, you know what I mean, and pay it forward. So yeah,
I think that's real right there. And I also want to add on that, like, I have a story for y'all.
Yes,
the other day I was hearing my auntie, right? One of my aunties, like, she cannot stand water. She can't even look water, even if it's a little pool. And she like opened up and she talked about how when she was fleeing Somalia to Yemen, right, on this boat that they had to go onto. And 2 days before they hopped on that boat, what ended up happening was they were told that the boat they were going to hop on, 100 people died. But they still had no other option but to hop on that boat, right? Or else they were going to, subhanAllah. So they hopped on that boat, and there was some people that pulled up on the boat and said, everyone hop off this boat in the open ocean. She couldn't swim. Her and the cousin couldn't swim. And imagine a predicament like that, they had to jump out. And there was one guy who literally said, look, the last guy that jumped out with them, he said, look, and in the middle of the ocean, was like, hey, you guys can hold on to my back, but the minute you guys start panicking, you guys gonna die right here. Literally, that's what he said straight up. So when I heard something like that, and subhanAllah, now, mashallah, going and she's here with all these kids and striving to get her education, AA. Now I'm like, subhanAllah, like how strong. I can't even imagine. Anni. And on the last episode with Ali Benedris, we kind of talked about how we were raised and the trials kind of facing our parents not knowing how to go about, being raised in a different culture and the values, how to make sure you continue to instill it while they had to go through all that. So like you said, it's like sympathizing with the parents and what they faced and what they went through.
Right.
So when I looked up, before we did this podcast, I looked up on this YouTube video, Somalia, mental illness. And the first thing that popped up was this guy named Abdullahi that was locked in a chain for 17 years. This is how they deal with mental illness people, yeah?
Oh my God, yeah.
17 years, locked in a chain and just left in a hut. And they just leave him like that. And there's like only one mental illness hospital that is actually, it's not even funded. It's funded, like it's just some donations, you know what I'm saying? And this is the state of our people, mental illness being swept under the rug. And this is the effects of that. You know what I'm saying? We want prosperity for Somali, we want growth for Somali, but there are people who are suffering, some people that go unrecognized. How are we going to expect prosperity under those circumstances? Right. And that's from my perspective. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, for you guys, right, growing up, how do you guys feel like you guys coped with your guys' experience? Because whether we acknowledge it or not, maybe we didn't face a war, but we faced our own struggles. Yeah. So how did you guys cope with your struggles and in terms of mental illness and your well-being?
For me, honestly, like with mental illness, I kind of dealt it all on my own. You know what I'm saying? Like for a long time, like my older sister, she suffered a great deal of mental illness, you know what I'm saying? Not being happy, and Allah Nahri says she's not here no more. And when my parents found out what actually happened to her, my mom was like, how could she do it? You know what I mean? And why did she do it? Even though and she blamed that she was turning crazy. She was crazy, And my dad, he did the same thing. But me, it like kind of brought on to me, like her part of mental health like came on to me, and to the point where I was like, for a long time, I was always depressed because I was like, I felt like it was my fault that she's not here, I was like blaming myself for that. I was like, man, like you not being here, I could have said something to my dad and you would have been here. But me, like, as a little brother, don't be a snitch, that thing was like, I'm gonna just go out. No, don't tell dad, That's what happened. I thought I was being a good brother by not saying something, later finding out she's not here no more. So I felt like the way I cope with it was just, for a long time, was just mad at myself and angry, and was like, it's your fault. But I remember there was a day that my dad, I went up to him and told him what happened, and he told me, it's not your fault. There's nothing that you could have done that changed that situation from happening, no matter what it is you think you could have done, and I feel like that made me feel a lot better in a way. So I was like, man, and then so growing up, I feel like how I do it is by just talking to people, trying to go to people that just may understand me, but just letting it out, knowing that whatever distress and everything that I felt, unleash it and make sure that you just hear me. That's all that I always wanted. So I feel like that's how I learned to cope with it.
Beautiful. I love that, you know what I mean? And I share a lot of similarities, the way how you coped it, you know? For me, I think a good example I could think of is my cousin. So my cousin back in 2016, he passed away. His name was Hamza or something. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
I heard of it.
Yeah. So it was my first time going to Seattle Central College. It was my first college. It was my freshman year of college, and we were going together in the same school, Seattle Central. We were going to classes together, very tight. I didn't have no friends at the time because I had obviously graduated from high school the year before. So he was my right hand man. You know what I mean? Going to classes, chilling, talking about sports. And in December, unfortunately, there was this day that he was trying to do a finals assignment with one of his classmates. He was Adnan. He was a white person, and so he went on. His mom didn't want him to leave the house that day to go work on his final, but he still resumed to link up with the classmate. And so unfortunately, we all got the news the next day that he had fell over a 8-story, 13-story building in Capitol Hill and died. And so the reason why I bring that up is I think that's the biggest time. That was the most pivotal moment in my life where my mental health was probably at its most vulnerable state, because I lost a loved one, and we lost a brother, a cousin in the community who, due to a hate crime, you know what I mean? It was definitely a hate crime. So during that time, I was just like, wow, like I had never dealt with death in my life. That was the first time I ever dealt with death in my life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Alhamdulillah, I'm still gonna count my blessings. You know what I mean? I'm not. It's not a feeling that I'm used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So having to not only have to learn how to deal with that, but then deal with it the way it was done. It took a huge toll on my mental health, you know what I mean, and my mental state of mind. And so basically, the way I coped with it was, this was the first time I actually did a protest. So I was actually one of the board members for the Somali club in Seattle Central, and so basically, I took it upon myself to use my leadership skills that I had rooted in me to try to gather people together to try to fight for his name, to try to seek justice for him, you know what I mean, and his family. And so, we was able to go on the New York Times, you know what I mean, like, because we had the hashtag Justice for Hamza trending all over Twitter and all over the schools. I had a couple public speaking events in Rainier Beach and other venues. And so we put up a long fight for like about 2-3 months. And then unfortunately one day we got the press, the news that said, hey, oh yeah, they found weed in the system. They think that he kind of slipped over the building. You know what I mean? He kind of tipped over the balcony on top of the 13-story building.
That's what they're trying to say.
That's what they're trying to say. So now I'm even more infuriated, right? I'm like, they're clearly not hearing us. They're clearly not listening to us. And we still have not gotten justice, just as you see today in 2020. And this is back in 2016, right?
True, yeah.
And this has been going on forever, right? This is not new. So this was at a time where I was just like, I don't know how to cope with this at this point. You know what I mean? I was like, what can I do? And I like to think, and I think people that know me, the community, people that my loved ones that know me, I'm a pretty high motor, optimistic, positive guy. You know what I mean? You won't really see me down. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just the way I kind of self-taught myself, and it was the environment that I grew up in. You know what I mean? Yeah. So this was probably the most vulnerable I ever was. And so what I sought out to do was, I had a mentor that I've had since my sophomore year. I was in a program called Summer Search, and basically that helped me. It was like another form of counseling. You know what I mean? Which is another thing I want to hopefully touch on later. Therapy, you know what I mean? I feel like, again, like you said, talking to people helps you grieve. Mm-hmm. It helps you process the trials and tribulations, the traumas that you're dealing with. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I realized that me talking it out was allowing me to heal. You know what I mean? It was allowing me to heal. It was allowing me to process my feelings, my emotions, my thoughts. And the more I got to do with that, the more I did that, the more I healed, basically. You know what I mean? The more I continued to fight. And then on top of that, about a month later, we found out that, that the case was not going nowhere. So I spoke to the mother and I said, so what do you want us to do now? You know what I mean? because I was in the forefront of this fight. She said, you know what? I had a dream about my son. I was like, tell me what was your dream? She said, I had a dream that he went to Jannah. You know what I mean? He went to heaven. And so she said, I'm at peace right now. I don't want you guys to fight no more. I don't want you guys to fight no more. I'm at peace. My son is at peace. He's in a greater place. Thank you for the fight. So that put my heart at ease. That made me feel a lot better in that journey I was in, that roller coaster of a time that I was living in. And I always go back to that point whenever I think about mental health for my personal life, for sure.
I feel like those are beautiful stories. And I feel like losing somebody, that's what you guys both touched on. For me, I have like people like my grandma, Lana Hadista, who passed away. And I also have a big thing was like my parents splitting, you know what I'm saying? And that happens to a lot of people. And I feel like everyone copes their own way. And I was younger when it happened to me. Right. And I feel like one way that I coped, alhamdulillah, I feel like even though the emotions of like not being around my pops and being with my mom and all that, I think that was a tough position. And I feel like a lot of kids go through that.
Right.
And I think for one, me being close to my mom, alhamdulillah, was a beautiful thing. Just being able to communicate with my loved ones, to be able to be vulnerable, communicate. And that's another thing, like us guys, unfortunately, that's another thing we could explore. Is like us guys, we're not allowed to talk about emotion type stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it's a thing that's unhealthy, suppressing type emotion. And I think that's dangerous because it's gonna come out in an unhealthy way, some form or another. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, we could talk about various ways of how that translates into someone's behavior. But alhamdulillah, I was able to express myself, articulate myself, and to people I trust first and foremost. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what helped me. And I think another thing that we could also explore is the therapy. Having somebody, for example, my stepmom, may Allah reward her, that was like one of my best friends right there. Being able to talk to somebody, be able to have a mentor, a counselor, someone you could sit with, and a professional would be nice, but all it has to do is be someone that you trust.
Yes, that's really what it is.
That's all it takes.
All it takes.
And unfortunately, I don't know why that's that unhealthy behavior of not being able to talk about what you're going through. And I feel like anybody who's listening to this, who has their own story about them going through hard times and tribulations, to really take a seat back and be like, okay, what am I going through? Why do I feel like this? And if you feel like you need to talk to somebody that you trust, then do that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the healthy route to go.
Yeah.
But yeah.
To add on that, you know what I'm saying? Like how you said to have somebody to talk to, you know? I remember when we were talking to Lee Ben last episode, he said something that sparked my mind. It was like, for the person that is going through something and you're the person that's listening, the best thing that you can do is just listen. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes giving advice may not get to them, but if you do listen to what they got to say, I promise you it would help them a lot more than you think it does. Yes. You know, that there's some people that go like initially, like you vent to them and they're automatically, let me help you. Just don't do that. Just listen. Just take in what they got to say, you know, and just internalize it and be like, wow, you know what I'm saying? And try to just cope with them and help them out in that situation. Just listening. I was like, I feel like that's what I needed to start to do instead of just right away, let me jump into helping you, you know? I just sit back, let me hear your side of the story. Let me hear what you're going through. And I feel like that helps a lot.
Yeah, well, I think it's a beautiful way to start a dialogue, you know what I mean? You have to kind of set that environment, you know what I mean? That, you know, you guys are both equals and that, you know, you're going to share your truths, you know what I mean? And I want to touch on something that you said, brother. Masculinity, we have a masculinity issue that kind of ties into the mental health, you know what I mean? Exactly. Because as men, right, we're taught that if you share your emotions, you're weak, basically. You know what I mean, right? You know what I mean? It's a sign of weakness. You know, you can't be vulnerable. You know, even being too affectionate. I mean, too empathetic, too loving is a sign of weakness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, too nice.
Yeah, being too nice. You know, so I think that also needs to change too. That narrative needs to change because, wallah, as you can see, as guys, you know, the more we keep stuff in, it comes out ugly later on, you know what I mean? In many unhealthy ways, like you said. So that's something that we also need to change. You know, we got to talk to our brothers and, you know, hey, brother, you know what I mean? That's, you know,
It's okay to release emotions sometimes.
It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to share your emotion. And also the masculinity thing also ties into how we treat women too. You know what I mean? We need to put that out the way. You know what I mean? We need to put our pride, our ego, and our masculinity mess out the way so that we could cultivate better spaces for women to speak up, to be themselves, to achieve what they want to achieve. Because this is something that's been rooted in our history for a long time. We need to change that too.
That's the truth. And like honestly, we got some time, so I just want to expand on that, right?
Yeah.
Like in the household, right? The role of the father, the role of the mother, and all these different stuff, right? You can see how mental health is kind of like the root, and also you can also tie the mental health to spirituality, and you could also they can serve to help hand in hand.
Yeah, hand in hand.
You know what I'm saying? Because the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he faced hardship. The most beloved to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, he faced hardship, and if there was anyone that was worthy not to face hardship, it would be him because of how beloved he was. So we're all gonna face hardship, and the mindset like why me? Why am I going through this?
Yeah.
We should strive not to have that mindset, but to acknowledge that this is gonna make me stronger in some way or another. Whereas if this didn't happen, I wouldn't have leveled up the way that this thing is pushing me to achieve that next level in my life. You know what I'm saying? That next chapter. And I feel like in the household, what ends up happening, you see this fragile, they say fragile masculinity. You know what I'm saying? I feel like to be masculine, it's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? But when you let it to you know what I'm saying, to make you egotistical and prideful and subhanAllah, you know what I'm saying? It's just unhealthy. How you treat people, how you interact, and how you treat yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Self-care. Love yourself. That's very important.
Yes.
How can you love someone else if you don't love yourself? If you're not confident in yourself, you don't appreciate yourself. They all are intertwined. Because if you don't do that, how you gonna treat someone good?
You can't.
You're not treating yourself good.
No.
So I think this is the building block of how you function in society. So prioritizing your mental well-being so that you can treat others the best that you could. You know what I'm saying? So
that's what it's about.
Yeah, but okay, so you guys want to explore another topic in terms of mental illness?
Yeah.
I think another thing I want to also expand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right? Another thing, if we also talk about the deen perspective, this might be taboo, but people say, oh, all mental illness is jinn possession. Or, you know what I'm saying? That's a huge thing.
That's definitely a huge thing.
That's a huge thing. And I think the dangerous thing is saying all mental illness is jinn possession, and all jinn possession is mental illness. I think what we have to do is take a step back and acknowledge that mental illness is a physiological illness, just as your leg breaks.
Yes,
your leg breaks.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. You need to take pain. You need to take medication if you need to.
Yeah,
I think that is fundamental. We have to address that. And if there's a spiritual concern, there's a spiritual concern. There's another avenue you can go. But I think differentiating them when you need to is very important. I think that needs to get across to our community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that we've had people kind of blame the jinn. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Or shaitan, or in some kind of way. And I think that if I'm saying this correctly, ableism. You know what I mean? I feel like, or even like, basically what I'm trying to say is, if you are not disabled, if Allah has given you the ability to think, to express, to talk, you don't really have any excuses. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But if you have some sort of condition or some sort of disability, I think then you have to give that person more naharis. You know what I mean? And more like you have to just be more understanding.
Yeah.
But for you to just ignorantly just blame it on shaitan or jinn, it's just I don't think that's right. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, Allah sees everything. Allah is all knowing and all powerful. Allah knows, and you know the truth. You know what I mean? If you know yourself well, you should know what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. And if you are capable of comprehending and understanding yourself and knowing how to speak and how to express yourself, then I think that we have to show more accountability and more ownership to our actions and our choices. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? We need more accountability, and we need to reflect. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's some of us, we talk to ourselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's
You
true,
guys ever
yeah.
catch yourself when you talk to yourselves? Like, talk to your loved ones. Talk to yourself if you have to. You know what I mean? Read the Quran. But I think that there's nothing that we could do if we're not mentally well. Mental wellness is essential in any fight that we're doing, whether it's to fight for our existence, fight for liberation, fight for humanity, fight to survive, fight to have a great career, to have a household. You have to be mentally well in anything and everything you do.
It's the foundation.
I agree. And then also like me watching your video, like mashallah, it was a very beautiful video, by the way,
Thank you.
One thing that I seen was the topic of police brutality. You know what I'm saying? And that is also like a big topic in the United States where police brutality does exist, where there's hate crimes being happening to one color that is the minority, which is black people. You know what I mean? And me, from where I come from, like people ask me like, hey, what do you want to be?
Yes.
And I tell them like my goal is to become chief of police one day so I can make a change in the community, but that always doesn't sound too good when I tell it to people, because they look at me as, oh yeah, he's a pig, he wants to kill black people. That's like already the stigma or the label that I get before you even know what my true intentions is,
Yes.
And my question is like, for you to talk about police brutality and be an activist, you know what I'm saying? How do you see that changing, if that makes sense?
Well, if you guys, I think one of the biggest topics going on right now is about defunding the police.
Yeah.
And how that would look like in our communities. And I think that police brutality was something that we definitely touched on the short film, and I wish we got the chance to touch on it a lot, but we tied in police brutality with social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as you guys can see, we have had a lot of unfortunate deaths that have been hugely publicized with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and the list goes on, for the last decade. And I think that even in your position, for someone that wants to be a chief police one day, we have to understand that not all cops are bad. But I do also agree that maybe police isn't probably what's best for our communities.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have some sort of different form of policing, you know what I mean? That we can have reliance on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe we don't have to rely on the police no more. Maybe that looks different. Maybe we have highly trained experts who can answer any of our issues that are going on in our neighborhoods, that can monitor the homeless people, that can give just punishment and consequences to those that are breaking the law.
Yeah.
But police brutality is very prevalent. It is a very big thing that's going on in our community right now. We definitely need more better examples. And I know a brother like you, Abdi, mashallah, if that is something that you want to pursue, I wholeheartedly know that you will make a big impact, not only in our communities, but in the world.
Inshallah,
We need more representation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get happy hearing that this brother wants to be a police officer, because we need more representation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need people that look like our kids, look like our people in our communities, you know what I mean? So that they could aspire to be like, hey, I want to be like Abdi one day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I hate that this even has to be a conversation where someone that even wants to pursue this field has to second guess because of what's going on. There's a huge bad stigma that is with police right now, but I'm also a very optimistic, hopeful guy.
Yeah.
That's what I live by every day with my faith. I believe that one person can make a big difference. You know what I mean? And you could be that too, Abdi.
Yeah. So, like one thing, that you talked about was maybe abolishing police, you know what I'm saying? Or just getting rid of it. And then me, one thing that I kind of agree with that, but not abolishing it. Yeah. Just that for the requirements for you to become a police officer, it's just only a high school diploma. Yes. And that's the thing that sometimes frustrates me, is the lack of education. You know what I'm saying? High school, you don't really learn about life at all. You don't really get to know who you really are. It's just simply you go to first to sixth period and you just take those classes, and then you just try to get the best grades for you to go to college. Then therefore learn who you really are. You know what I mean? So me knowing, I feel like as like the police structural, I feel like it should be a requirement of you to get a degree in criminal justice. Because why have a criminal justice degree if you have people that only have high school diploma that work in the criminal justice field? You know what I mean? That's something that always frustrated me. And it's like, I'm like, okay, because I do see that the injustice is happening for a long time. Like my dad told me a story about police brutality and stuff. He told me, like, do you know why they got rid of Black Panther? Because if you look at it, Black Panther was they were police essentially. They were just in our community. They were the police. Yes. So if anything happened, they're there to support you. You know what I mean? But the white privileged people, they decided to be like, you know what? They're doing a bit too much that helping their community, and we don't want that. So what we're gonna do is drop them, be like, no, you guys can't do this. And guess what? Then we start looking at each other and start fighting each other, you know? So I feel like for this to change, I feel like more of Black people, more colored people need to join the police police, you know? Join the police. So therefore we can have a lot more, you know, color, like, you know what I'm saying? So therefore they feel the same pain that we do. Yes. Because at the end of the day, I agree with protesting, but we've done it for so long. How long do we keep doing it for? Right. You know? Yeah.
This reminds me of a line that you said. I was like, whoa, it took me back in the documentary. Yeah. I want to make sure I get it right. I think you said America's dream has always been like what? The African's nightmare? Yes. I was like, I heard that in the car. I was like, subhanAllah. That's true. Facts right there. Yeah. And like you guys talking about what, you know, policing and stuff like that. Another thing that comes to mind, we're at that protest in CTEC. Someone said like, okay, you want to be a police officer, right? Okay. But the thing is you're upholding laws and policies. So it's like a whole structural shift that has to happen, a whole bunch of reform that has to happen. And like one thing I keep on saying, like that goes in with what you said, is the fact that this country was built on the backs of what? Africans. Yes. Suppressing, oppressing. Right. And basically, subhanAllah, is built on the suffering of black people and minorities. Yeah. And it's like now we have to get back and be like, okay, we here, right? It may not have been made for us, but we got to do something with it. Yeah. And subhanAllah, it's like, man, for me personally, I wish Somali was functioning. I wish it was functioning at the level that I would feel safe to take myself and my family. Yes. But unfortunately, it doesn't feel like that. This is what's home to us right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not a Muslim country. Yeah. It's not a Somali country. Yeah. And unfortunately, we have to make the best we can. Yeah, we have to make the best we can. Yeah. And I think that's what we should strive for. And I feel like the advocacy work that you're doing, the protesting, I think that's what we should be doing.
100%. And I'm happy you brought up the African nightmare thing, because again, you know, one of the reasons why I even made this East African documentary is because, well, I'm very involved in the East African community. But also on top of that, I felt like we're not highly represented in social media form or just any platform, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why I was like, how can I do something that is gonna touch strongly to my platform, my support system. But also you have to see, as East Africans, like I mentioned earlier, the intersectionality, we're also Black in America too, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We have the same oppressors. We just have two different stories. Yeah. East Africans and African Americans, we deal with the same type of oppression. We just have two different stories. We're still in the same bottom of the barrel when it comes to the hierarchy of system, when it comes to equality and equity. We both dealt with years and hundreds of years of trauma and intergenerational trauma. So when I did this, I remember, you know, all of our parents, you know, when we fled away from our war-torn countries, they came for a better life, you know what I mean? To live the quote-unquote American dream. Yeah. But the American dream was never built on the backs of equality and equity and all that. It was built for only white people, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even going back to what you were saying, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that we're living under a system that was never made for us to begin with. Yeah. So we have to dismantle that, and it's not going to change overnight, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's a long fight, and I hope we live to see it in our existence. Mm-hmm. And we might not, as sad as to say, we might not be able to see that day, maybe, but I do personally believe, as an optimistic person, that liberation and freedom is just around the corner. Yeah. We'll get, you know, despite the trials and tribulations, despite the brutality, the traumas, if we continue this fight and we have like-hearted people like us, people that have good intentions of the world, that want to bring people together and fight for liberation, we will get there, inshallah ta'ala, one day.
Inshallah, man.
If not in this dunya, then eternity up in heaven, you know, inshallah.
Like, to what you were saying, I remember Idris and I were talking about this in high school, freedom. Like, you know what I'm saying? Freedom, like, it sounds good, but to America, it comes with a contract. You know what I mean? Freedom may be not what you think it is. Cause I remember I said something, it's like freedom was like a contract where they have this, rope on you.
Right.
You may do whatever thing you may please to do, but if it's something that they know is too powerful for you to do and that you can change people, they tug it. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's these restrictions that we have around freedom, and it's like, is it really freedom? Is it like, you know what I'm saying? You're just trying to sell me the word freedom. You know what I mean? So I agree with what you're saying. You know, hopefully one day we do see the justice, you know what I'm saying, in our community and also in all over the world, you know? Right. But at the same time, I always notice, like, for you to get peace, there's always going to be that, you know, enemy, you know what I'm saying? Right. So how can me, in my opinion, because my dad always told me there's two sides to the coins, good or bad. You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So how do you I would say kill the evil and bring the peace but if it all started from evil.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think I like the fact that you brought up freedom, right? I think there's also this thing about freedom that we have an illusion of what freedom looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we don't really know what freedom is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're privileged. Yes, we probably have better circumstances that our parents had to deal with and our ancestors. Mm-hmm. But I feel like many of us get trapped into this illusion of freedom. Oh yeah, we have freedom. But wallahi, once you find yourself in certain spaces, you're gonna realize, no, you never really had freedom. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You know, because if we really had freedom, we wouldn't be having multiple of these issues that we're dealing with today. You know what I mean? With a lack of representation, lack of the injustices that's going on with the prison reforms, going on with Mahaladaha, even let alone try to be in a political position. Do you know how hard it is to even get into a table with these Adam people? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we have all these things, these obstacles that are stacked up against us. You know what I mean? We've all had to live to be underdogs our whole lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that inshallah, I love the Gen Zs that are living, that we're in right now. You know what I mean? I feel like we have a lot of people that are gonna be mood shakers. Yeah. I feel in my heart we have people that are gonna really change this world for the better, because we're very driven, alhamdulillah, mashallah. You know what I mean? I think we're learning from the mistakes of the people that came before us. I think I'm starting to see more empathy, more sympathy with this generation. We're being more vulnerable. You know what I mean? And maybe a lot of that has to do with social media platforms. We have a lot more to say, right? Exactly. Some of us, you know what I mean, due to our platforms, we're more connected, you know what I mean? It's a more connected world. But social media can be bad and good. It just depends on how you look at it, you know what I mean? And how you use it. But I really believe that, inshallah, I hope we live to see what freedom really does look like, not what the illusion of freedom looks like.
That's all right there, inshallah. Now, before we go, right, I feel like one important thing that you've held on to throughout this whole journey is your optimism.
Thank you.
Right, and I feel like in this fight, you got to be optimistic, right? To keep having the drive to keep going. How do you stay so optimistic?
Wallahi, faith, first of all, you know what I mean? Can't do anything without the guidance and love and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also reading hadiths, picking up a kitab, you know, when you get the chance to, you know, recite some of the important surahs that are in the Quran. That spiritually does something different to you, you know what I mean? It makes you at ease, and it lets you know that no matter what trials or tribulation or conflicts that you're dealing with your life, Allah will never put you through something that you can't get through. Allah will never put you through something that you couldn't handle, you know what I mean? And like you said, you know, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he dealt with many traumas and conflicts and issues in his life, and he's the most beloved, you know what I mean? If he can do it, why can't we do it? You know what I mean? He gave us a pathway. He curved us a pathway to have spirit, to have faith, to know the right and wrongs in this dunya. He's taught us how to show love and respect to our parents, how to mahaladaha, how to carry ourselves to be the best Muslims we can be, how to be good brothers, how to be good fathers, how to be good sisters, how to be good mothers. So a lot of it, honestly has to do with faith for sure. And I always go to that first. And then second is I'm a bit family for sure. You know what I mean? I think there's something beautiful that comes with knowing where you come from and embracing that. Never forgetting where you come from. You know what I mean? Embracing mahala, the environment that you grew up in, whether it's your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your close friends, all the good and the bad. Wallah, it helps shape you to become stronger, to be the person you are today. And so, wallah, honestly, you know, having huge people that I admire and idolize, like Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and also mahala daha. I've read a lot of books. I looked up to Malcolm X, you know what I mean? Dr. King. Some of the tactics and strategies to be nonviolent, to be a good humanitarian, to be a good citizen. That definitely helps hold my spirits, because I want to make a change in this world just as much as they did. You know what I mean? I don't want to be anywhere close to Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but I want, inshallah, when my time is done, Allah to be pleased with me, and I want to leave a positive impact. I want my kids and my future generation of kids and the people, all the Muslims around the world, to say, hey, you know, this brother went through this, he did that, I could do it too. So wallahi, honestly, I live for legacy. Wallahi, I know it's very young for me to say that. I'm only 23 years old, but wallahi, it's always on the tip of my head. Wallahi, but I want to leave a positive legacy, wallahi, in this dunya.
That's true, man. There's like a saying that Tupac said. It was like, one man may not change the world, but he may spark the brains of the people that can change it.
Yes. And I love that quote. And Tupac's actually another dope brother, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has a lot of gems that I've really instilled in my practices. And yes, I want to spark the change, the brain that can change the world one day too, you know what I mean?
So
yeah, Allah.
MashaAllah. Inshallah, I feel like we shared a lot of powerful things from our own experiences, and I feel like that will be the spark in a lot of other people.
Inshallah.
But thank you guys for tuning in to episode 7 of Talk Ya Haqq. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube video. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace.